Thank you. I want you to think back. Think back to the most difficult interview question you've ever had. Think back to the most difficult interview you've ever had. Perhaps that question you knew not only determined whether you're going to get the job, but perhaps it even controlled the next stage of your career. I had such a moment. It was 20 or so years ago. After college, I did LAN desktop support. Did a little bit of process work. Later took a role with IBM in their process organization. I didn't particularly care for the role. However, I thought what the project manager were doing looked rather interesting. So I read as much as I could, got my hands on as much reading material, books, whatever I could read and absorb, I did. I went to as many classes, as many seminars, and as many conferences, just like the one you're at today. And I made my intention known. I was interested in project management. And I found myself in my first interview for a project manager position. And the hiring manager, Chris, she looked at me and she said, "Nick, you're running a project and it's behind schedule. What do you do? Do you help?" And she baited me along. She said, "Do you roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty?" And I had to think about it. So I didn't think the question was that straightforward. I said, "Yes, I would help. However, I will not roll up my hands, my sleeves, and get my hands dirty. You see, my role as a project manager would be to find new resources, more resources, maybe look at the schedule of my team. Maybe we could do some tasks in parallel instead of serial. You have to consider, what is risk? This is a risk conference. What is risk? Risk is not anything more than problems or issues or opportunities that have not yet come to fruition. So what problem or issue do you suppose that the hiring manager, Chris, was trying to avoid? She was trying to avoid the fact that some people, some technical people like myself at the time, are not able to transition to the project leadership role because the skill set, the job is different. Leading a project, getting work done through others is not the same as doing the work yourself. See, risk is much more than just risk registers, impacts, probabilities, risk response planning. If we look at risk as problems or issues or opportunities that have not yet occurred, it's a whole lot more. Problems and issues, opportunities everywhere. So is risk. Risk is everywhere. I ask anyone in this room to remember the last successful project that they ran. One that has maybe many teams, which comes along with many status reports, meeting minutes, project plans, communication plans, risk registers, action items, all of that. Has anyone in this room at the end of a project been able to go to eBay and sell any of their project artifacts? No, I didn't think so. And I've never had anyone raise their hand with that question. The last conference I spoke at, someone in the audience mentioned their organization was just doing away with project managers. And I don't suggest that. And I think it'll be interesting to see where they are 6 months from now. But if project managers produce nothing of material value, and we could run a project without us, why do we have jobs? PMI will tell you it's hitting the triple constraints: cost, schedule, scope, or maybe the quad constraints if you throw quality in there. I believe the reason we have a job is because a seasoned, experienced, certified project manager raises the probability, the statistical probability of project success. That's why we're here. So we have to consider, what is success? It can't just be the triple constraints. I believe it's much more basic. Did the customer receive what they expected to receive when they expected? Did the customer pay what they expected to pay? Did delivery make the profits? Do the organizations want to do business together again? When change came about on your projects, were you flexible? Were you able to shift? Was your project able to adapt? You see, success, it's not just about the destination. It's also about the journey. What I see in the industry are a lot of what I call status reporters. Today I'm red, maybe last week I was yellow, and those are the same people who tend to report and then walk away. They're working on problems and issues. They're working in the present or the past. Where I say we all want to be is where that the psychic plus, I'll call it, works. They're using the process, the tools, to look not just at today, but 2, 3, 4 months down the line, where their project is going. And the plus part comes into play because they're not just seeing issues. They're solving those problems before they ever occur. And when they're doing their job well, they look like the swan. From the surface, everything seems to be moving smooth on their projects. Underneath, they may be paddling like crazy, but they're doing it in a proactive manner. I had a project that I was managing. It was about halfway through. Things were going well. We were hitting our targets. The budget was on target. Milestones. Customer was happy. And I got a call from my manager. He says, "Hey, Nick, how are you doing?" "Doing good. Everything's fine." Yeah, I know that. I know. You're hitting your numbers, targets, customer's happy. Great. Things are going well. You know what? I need to what? I need to steal some cycles of yours. So, wow. Didn't know I had any cycles to steal. But I should have taken that as a compliment. When things are going so smooth, your manager or your customer, they almost envision this pixie-wielding little fairy flying around, making everything just fall into place on your projects. But we know that's not the case. Think back to the last successful projects you've had. Did you ever sit back and wonder, wow, we were a success. Things just fell into place. I don't know how we ended up here. It just happened by magic. No, because success is not by accident. I got a call to come into my manager's office one Thursday afternoon. She says, Nick, I've got some good news and some bad news. She says, we just won that security deal. The bad news is we sold you as the project management security expert, and you start on Monday. Now, I don't suggest we take it to that level. But if we had to look at the profile of a project leadership team that drives success, I believe it's 80% process expertise. It's knowing the right questions to ask. And of course, there's that 20% technical, the hows. And I encourage you to get that information from your project architects. And I get that if you've managed 50 bridge construction projects before, managing the 51st, you're more likely to succeed. But I promise you, focus on the process. Use your architects for the technical. It's about black box management. Asking the right questions. The two most important artifacts, and they're not risk per se artifacts for brainstorming, is your work breakdown structure and your schedule model. Create those together with your team. Ask the questions. What are we here for? Why do we need this? If this task doesn't complete, what can't start? They're all the same questions from project to project to project. After you've created your work breakdown structure, which will morph into the schedule model, us project managers by nature, we're pessimistic. We're looking at how can things go wrong. I encourage you, don't just look for how things can go wrong, but how could you speed things up? How could you do things better? Risk management, risk leadership, it's not just about how things can go bad. How can you take advantage of opportunities that haven't come to fruition yet? SpongeBob and Patrick were going for a walk in Bikini Bottoms. And yes, I have children, so I know the name of the city that SpongeBob lives in. They're going for a walk. And off in the distance, they spot a bear. That bear starts to come running at them. And SpongeBob goes and he puts his leg up on a log. He starts to tie his shoelaces tight. Patrick comes over. SpongeBob, what are you doing? Do you really think by tying your shoelaces tighter that you could outrun that bear? SpongeBob looks at it and says, oh, Patrick, my friend, I don't need to outrun the bear. I need to outrun you. On your projects, you need to understand the WIFM, the what's in it for me. You need to understand that in multiple levels. As an individual person on your team, what's in it for me? As the team, what's in it for me? As your customer, sponsor, what's in it for me? And the organization, what's in it for me? Because if the risk and the rewards do not align across all of those, at the first sign of trouble, people are going to be looking out for themselves. You won't have a team. You won't even have a team of SpongeBobs. You'll have a group of SpongeBobs. And that's no way to ensure project success. I'm married and I have 3 children. And every one of the family were born in different cities. I'm from New York. My wife is from the Amazon, she's from Brazil. My oldest son was born in Connecticut. My middle son in Miami, Florida. And my daughter in Jacksonville, Florida. And we always had this running joke about where you were born determining whether you would be cold or not as we visited different climate. And we were planning a trip for the winter to go to my godfather in Ohio, where it would be cold. And I'm driving to the supermarket one day. My 2 boys are in the back, maybe 5 and 6 at that time. And I could hear, Sean, you don't understand. I'm going to be cold in Ohio because I was born in Dad's Ammy. I mean, I can't make this stuff up. Pulled the car over. I looked back in shock. I said, what? You say that again? He says, Dad, I'm going to be cold in Ohio because I was born in your Ammy. Oh, okay. I get it. I get the miscommunication. As projects get larger and more global, interfaces and handoffs increase. Each team does their special thing. Each team produces an output, that's an input to another team. I challenge you, if my children could confuse Miami with Dad's Ammy and your Ammy, could you not have communication problems on your projects? Look at your projects and remember, what you hear, what you think you hear, is what you mean. But what's more important is you realize that you need to look at what the other person hears. And if my son can confuse Miami like this, think about all that communication challenges we have as teams get bigger, larger, and more global. Last year, we took a trip to my wife's hometown in the Amazon. And I like to try new foods, and I like cashew nuts. So my wife hands me this cashew fruit. That's what you see up there. That's a cashew fruit. Just here, try this. So I bit into that cashew fruit. It was unlike no other fruit I've ever tried. Unbelievable. Finished it up. And I said I like cashew nuts, right? So after I ate the fruit, I bit into the top piece there, the cashew. I bit in, and out came a white, creamy, highly toxic fluid. My lips got all numb, tongue swelled up, throat swelled up. It took 2 days for the burns to go away, 2 hours or so for the swelling to go down. What I learned is it's just as important to define what one should do as one should not. When you're defining your scope, it's just as important to define what is in scope and what is not. When your organization is defining their goals and objectives, it's just as important to define what is not. And the only true measure of whether an organization has done that properly or not, and I ask you, has your company ever turned down healthy, profitable, high-margin work? If it has not, you're not pursuing your strategy. Because not every project, not every objective can be strategic. Choosing to follow every strategy is not a healthy strategy. It's first about doing the right work. If your project, quote unquote, is a success, but no one uses the product of your project, is it a success? If it produces no benefits, is it a success? No. It's about doing the right work. Why are we here? There's one up there I like. What if this project fails? Or what if we just don't do it at all? Does anyone care? The answer is no. Why are we doing this? After you've determined whether the work is the right work, it's about what? Doing the work right. Project management, it's about managing the gap, the deltas. From no matter what angle you look at it, there's a desire or an ask from your customer or your sponsors, and there's your forecast. Where are we heading if we don't change course? Your job is to bring those into alignment. Now, what the customer wants may not always be what you expect to deliver, but it's part of that gap, and that's what we're there for. So when you're managing your projects, always look at the opposing desire and direction, the heading. The project schedule, it allows you to do what-if analysis. It allows you to look into the future for problems or issues that have not yet occurred. That is the definition of risk. Issues, problems that have not yet occurred. Opportunities that have not yet occurred. So whether we call the project schedule model a risk tool or not, it's highly important for you to de-risk your projects. And I'm not here to say you have to use Microsoft Project. What I am here to say is you have to use a project scheduling tool. And that tool is not Excel, PowerPoint, or Word. I'll say that again. Word, Excel, PowerPoint, those are not scheduling tools. You cannot predict the future with those tools. And if you can't predict issues, you can't solve them before they occur. You will be in the realm of the status reporter. Why? Because the tools don't look at the relationships between the tasks, the successors and the predecessors. The schedule is not just a list of tasks. It's what's between the lines that matters the most. And over the years, I've received a lot of pushback from using a proper tool. Oh, Excel is easier to use. Or management doesn't want to see reports out of project. I agree. The first few projects you manage in any new tool will be harder, will take you longer than a tool you're comfortable with. Management doesn't want to see reports out of this tool set. Fine, don't produce them out of that tool set. You could have a tool set for reporting and a tool set to manage your project. What I find most ironic, and probably no one in this audience would do, but maybe there's some colleagues of yours back at the office that would, is they use Excel and they add little pretty charts, colors, they add the resources. What do? They do all that they can to make it look like what? Like Microsoft Project. Why not just use the tool? When you do set up your model, you need to look at it from two angles. One, what questions does your customer have of you, of the project? And two, remember, that schedule, it's not just for your customer. What information do you need to run your project better, to lower the risk on your project? The tool is for the customer and for you to better run your projects. You wouldn't go on a journey without a map. You wouldn't just start driving for point B. But we do that in project management sometimes. I say if you can't tell me how you're getting from point A to point B, you're not getting to point B. Your schedules should map out from beginning to end, the big picture, how you're getting to success. Predecessors, successors, you've got your critical path, the tasks that are most critical to manage delays on your projects. But you also need to merge that with your resource availability, your resource calendars, whether materials or resources. So it's not just critical tasks that's important. People can be bottlenecks. Skill sets can be bottlenecks. If you don't merge the model with the resource calendar, you're just looking at the critical path, which is not enough. My godfather, he's got a nice little farm, and he's got a creek running behind his property. And he wanted to put up a yurt so we could grill out, crash in the yurt when we wanted to. So he goes online and finds these do-it-yourself yurts. Some of them even turnkey yurts. And it's delivered on 2 flatbed trucks with a 3-inch manual on how to put it together with 243 steps. Would you call that do-it-yourself or turnkey? I wouldn't. When your customer signs that contract or your sponsor approves that project charter, their role changes. They move from being just the customer to being the customer and part of the team. If you don't help them understand that transition, I promise you they'll be in the realm of turnkey. Here's the keys. Tell me when you're done. It's your job to make sure they understand what their new roles are. What I like to do is provide them a to-do list. I call it the 14-day outlook. What's everything that is either in progress or is going to start within 14 days? And I hand that to the customer. I explain to them, these are your tasks. If you're late, it will impact your project. If you're not having that discussion with your customer, it's going to look more like, here are the dates, make it happen. It's in your best interest to address that. Otherwise, deal with the word turnkey. I know that's one of the words that I loathe, is turnkey. Because nothing is turnkey in my world. You wouldn't fly a plane without instruments or gauges, would you? So why do we do that in projects? When we have 1,000-line schedules without instruments or gauges, you cannot be expected to spend 1/1,000th of your time on each task. It's with gauges that we can do exception management. Looking at the critical path, looking at critical resources, comparing the forecast to the baseline. Where should you put your attention? Because it can't be everywhere. I tend to work out of the customer site or at the headquarters and sometimes at home. And one day, I'm working at home and I hear this loud noise. It goes da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da. What the heck is this? So I open up my office door, walk out of my house, go take a look at the roof. And on the top of the roof, I see this very cute little squirrel. Maybe not this one. And he's gnawing on a vent pipe going to a bathroom adjacent to my office. Go back in the office, do a little research to find out that squirrels like the sweet taste of lead in pipes. So that squirrel had been gnawing away at the pipe, and it could cause a leak and water get into my roof, so I didn't appreciate it. But he was chewing that pipe. And what I later found is the squirrels tend to chew on the pipes over a long period of time. Not only does the pipe go down, but their teeth do as well. And over time, their teeth get rounded, and they can't bite into nuts and food. And they slowly starve to death. 20 years ago, when I first entered project management, the saying was that 80% of projects failed. Fast forward to today. What's the number? 80% of projects fail. If we're doing the same things we've been doing all along, how are we different from the squirrel? Are we not dying a slow death. Today, you're going to hear from a lot of great speakers, practitioners, even authors. I encourage you, you may not agree with everything they have to say, but you're here to learn. I encourage you to have an open mind. And when you return to your office, take back something new, different that you're going to try. Because if we don't, we're nothing different than the squirrel. I'm ready for a change, and I hope you are as well. But I think we need to do it together. So I encourage you, let's change the industry together. Thank you.
So we have about 15 minutes, and questions are in order at the end of every presentation. If you have any questions, please share them.
This is about dashboards. When we present a dashboard to executive management, do you recommend to have one where you have, here are the good things that are happening with the project, here are the challenges in red, or would you recommend something different?
Sure. So on two fronts, I always recommend that anything that you've accomplished, I call it the what have you done for me lately, is brought up to the customer or the sponsor before there's issues. I call it building the good deed bank. If you don't, you're just coming with the bad news. The second thing is the reports, I think they need to paint a picture of why your management cares. I had an experience where I was talking to a sales guy years ago, and he had asked me a question, and I proceeded to answer with what I cared about. He says, Nick, but that's nice, but who cares? And I repeated myself. He says, Nick, no, why do I care? So you have to look at, if you were the project sponsor, what is their concern? Yes, it's budget, yes, it's schedule, but being in that position, they're probably worried that their job, their name is on the line. So it's a more of a warm and fuzzy that they're looking for, that your project is headed in the right direction and that you're on top of it. So it's the destination and it's also the journey that's keeping them okay. So I would address that.
Okay.
That answer the question?
It did. Thank you.
Sure. What do you do about the dynamic between delivery and sales? Is that a fair assessment? I've been in delivery, and it's until recently I've been in services sales for about 3 years. And I will say I probably had the same feelings that you may be expressing now, okay? In services sales, we want a repeat customer. We're not out there to set out delivery for failure. You have to look at it as what's in it for me. Okay? Always look at the what's in it for me. You may say, you made the sale, you overpromised, the cost is much higher. Yeah, that works on a one project, one instance customer. But how many of your customers are repeat customers? The amount of effort to sell to a repeat customer is much less than getting that new customer. So when we're out there, we want to sell a profitable project, but we want delivery to deliver it and deliver it well, because I want to sell them the second or the third project. So it's in our best interest, to be quite honest, to not overpromise, not pass the ball to delivery. You had also asked or mentioned turning down work. Yes, sales does actually turn down work. Think about it. If we sell a project that our delivery organization does not have the expertise and can't deliver, you could sell a small project, very little margins, very little revenue, and have your delivery team totally mess it up and mess up the relationship with a large customer. So have I turned work down? Absolutely. Because we have a niche, and that means that you're good at some things and you're not at others. We've also gone after specific work because maybe it's a market that we want to expand into. Maybe it's a new complementary technology. So there's lots of reasons that you go after work and that you turn down work. And believe me, once I moved over to the sales role, I did start to realize that, hey, it's not as if they're all out on an opposing team. It's all one team, and we do value delivery. Sometimes we don't show it, I guess.
I manage global projects, and one of the things that I find most challenging is staying in communication or getting the right type of reporting from middle management. In terms of the project execution team, I'm very tight and with them, and I seem to understand very well what it takes to deliver the project. However, when escalations happen or when something happens, it seems like, I'm not saying that it's true, but it seems like from the customer's perspective and from internal management, it seems like micromanagement starts to happen. And so how do you deal with that, or how do you mitigate some of that before it happens?
Sure. I've seen that as well. That's why I'm sort of smirking. It almost seems as if when a project goes into trouble, well, let's just have meetings every day instead of once a week. And let's just ask the same question every day instead of every week. And I promise you that's not the answer. The answer is within communications, but just having more of something doesn't always make that more valuable. I did project recovery for a while, and what I always found is that the roadmap was never fully developed. That's where I've had a lot of my challenges. When I look at a project, I say, okay, what are your milestones? What are the dates that the customer or your sponsor is asking for? And I get a whole list. And I compare that to almost the train stops that you might have on a MTA map. These are the dates that I want to hit. And then I look behind the scenes, and there's nothing supporting those dates. You agreed to December 1st. Well, what needs to happen before that to get there? That's where I've seen a lot of the issues. It's hard to give an answer because it all depends on what you think is causing your project issues. I like to talk to all different people, see what is your opinion, what do you see happening, and then you could glean where to put your attention. But 9 out of 10 times I've seen the schedules not being fully developed.
So the main projects that I work on are R&D focused, and so therefore what happens is sometimes the first experiment doesn't go well, and the second experiment might not go well too, and you kind of have to reiterate until you find the magic formula in order to be able to create a solution. And they may or may not hit this timeline that your stakeholders want. So therein lies the challenge, because sometimes I find that when I just communicate to them saying, hey, we're doing this, and we're doing this, sometimes the stakeholders doesn't seem to care. Like, I don't really care what you do, I want you to hit that date. So
I had a customer, I took over a project, and we're in a meeting, and they says, we want that date to move in by 2 weeks. And they started to walk out the door. I said, make it happen. I stopped them. I said, where are you going? What are you doing? He says, make it happen. They pull it by 2 weeks. I said, I need you, your project architect, your project manager, and I'll get mine. We'll sit in a room. We'll look at the schedule, and we'll determine what we could pull in, what we could change to hit your dates. It was a new concept. They were in the realm of turnkey. During that meeting, we had maybe 5 items that needed to be fixed before the next meeting. 3 on us, 2 on the customer themselves. How do you think the next meeting went? We didn't hit our dates. But why? Customer didn't hit their deliverables. But by going through that exercise, it was not my team's fault. We're bringing to light what we as a team need to hit to pull in your dates. Eventually, they got the concept down to realize that their tasks, their deliverables could delay their own project. But in the beginning, it's not a concept that always comes to your customers or your sponsor. They're thinking turnkey. Other questions?
So I've used Microsoft Project and Primavera, maybe not the most up-to-date versions and the most fully featured versions, but I want to talk about Excel. And I'm not challenging you, because I know you're building cowboy. I'm just asking a question. So if you have Excel and it does all the math, it figures out the critical path, even changes the arrows red, recalculates everything if you have a change in a duration of a task, recalculates float, forward, backward, past, all that, then what is it missing in your opinion, in your experience?
Nothing. So I'll restate, I really don't care if you use project or not. It's a proper project management tool. Excel, out of the box, is just a list of tasks. That's the way I've seen most people manage it. Straight down the line, no indentation, no grouping. They might throw resources, they might throw start, finish dates. When one task changes, nothing else changes. There is no trickle effect. If you found a way to make that happen in Excel, all the power to you. It's the process. It's not the tool.
It's actually a great question. I don't know how many people know this. When Microsoft Project first came out, it was actually 2 Excel spreadsheets that were barely tied together. There was one with time and one with resource. And that's why it crashed all the time. They rewrote it finally. It now sits on an Access database. One of the issues with Excel is that it does what it does really well, but it doesn't do dependencies. It doesn't do a lot of the stuff that you really need in a project, particularly if you're trying to manage schedule risk. So some kind of scheduling tool is, for a project of any complexity, is pretty close to a necessity. If you go into it without one, you're looking for trouble, and you'll probably find it. Good. How about one more question?
The question was, what's a project architect? Well, remember, in project management, we have roles. So I'm not talking titles. As a project manager, I really don't care what people's titles are. A project architect is the lead person on your project who knows the ins and outs of the technology that you're managing. The idea being, as a project manager, if you know about the process, the 80% of the process, you could move from doing an installation project to maybe doing a database install project to a security project. Like I was saying there, on Thursday I got the call, you're the security project manager expert. That is possible if you know the process. And then you have that other person who you could bounce the hows off of. If you don't have a project architect role or title in your organization, I say just create it. It's your project. You could call people whatever you want. Create a project architect and give them that function. They're your right-hand man, right-hand person.
So I'd like to thank Nick. Thank you very much.